Okay, hello, my name is Marj Berthold, and this is the Chief of Police of Burlington, and the show's about what is not working in Vermont mental health systems and Vermont organizations. I live in South Burlington, actually, but I've lived in Burlington, too, for a long time, longer than I've lived anywhere. And so if the Chief would like to give a short introduction, please.
Yeah, sure. Hey, Marj, I'm glad to be here. My name is Brandon Pozo. Since September 1st, I've been the Chief of Police of Burlington, Vermont.
Since when?
September 1st.
September?
September 1st, that's right. I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York, born there, educated in public schools up until high school in New York City, attended Dartmouth College, graduated in 1996, became a New York City police officer in 1997, worked there for about 18 years, and I always had my heart set on moving up north. I enjoy the wilderness. I enjoy skiing, rock climbing, biking, all of that. So I've always had a special place for Burlington in my heart. And when the job opened up, I applied, and here I am.
I just wanted to mention something about Hanover, New Hampshire, is where I was born.
Okay.
And my dad taught at Dartmouth, and now my folks were at Kendall and retirement community in Hanover. My mom just passed away in January.
Sorry to hear that. Yeah.
So anyway, we should probably get on to these questions. When a client says something inhumane in the Vermont mental health system to another client, what can be done about it from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, well, to be clear, I'm new to Vermont, and I'm new to looking at the Vermont mental health system. So some of the things I say will be, unfortunately, generalities. I know in the police department we have a complaint system where somebody says something inhumane to another person. One of our employees says something, we can investigate that. The thing about persons with mental illness, especially client to client, is they're citizens, they're people, they have freedom of speech, right? They still have the obligation to be respectful to other folks, but what one citizen can say to another, whether that citizen's mentally ill or not, is a very, very wide range of things. And my thought off the bat is, short of violence or hate speech, I mean, folks in Vermont, this is a free state. They can say almost anything they want to each other.
Well, basically, what do you think about encouraging, like if another client said something inhumane, we'll say to another client in front of you, whether you, what do you think about encouraging that not to happen?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's a great point. Nothing prevents any person, and I guess that some of the healthcare providers have an obligation to encourage respectful behavior. I know that I set that standard with my own police officers. So sure, I'd hope that someone else would at least take action and say what you're doing has consequences. It's making someone feel horrible. You need to stop. I mean, absolutely.
And because, see, everyone affects everything. And, if other people say something about it, then it, to discourage it, then I think it is less likely to happen. At least they'll think about it.
Right.
And, so what do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I think I agree with you, Marj.
And should we, is there anything more you want to say about that, or do you think we should move on to the next?
I think we're good. I think there's a lot of interesting questions to get to.
Would you consider having a survey question from a citizen about communication with the police department and the community? The reason that it's important to hear from a citizen is so the question is not impersonal, it helps with healing, and it validates the person's experience so their life is not in vain.
Yeah, I think that, having a particular survey is one thing, but one of the things we definitely do in the Burlington Police Department, and it's an important part of my leadership, is to provide citizens with lots of opportunities to hear, to voice their concerns. So we have open police commission meetings. I've had coffees with the chief in every neighborhood that all citizens are invited to. In the coming months, at least by December, definitely January, we'll have office hours twice a month where citizens can make an appointment and get at least 15 minutes of my time, day or night, once a month. So there are plenty of ways for citizens to come in and express their concerns to the police, and I encourage them to.
Well, I guess maybe you didn't quite understand my idea for the survey. Right. See, if it went out to people, right, then it would be like the experience, had the efforts wouldn't be done in vain if other people knew about it, because you see, everyone has their own comfort level of what avenue they feel comfortable going in, and some people might not feel comfortable in one avenue, and they might more in another, and so I don't know if it's quite clear what I'm suggesting.
No, I know. In fact, when I left New York City, the New York City Police Department conducted actually a very thorough and pretty expensive survey of thousands of citizens. I mean, the questions are, it's 40 some odd thousand folks in Burlington. Reaching them all and letting them all know that they have a survey that they can complete is not exactly cheap. I would consider it, sure, I would consider it, but I urge you to understand as well, there are plenty of ways to contact the police: calling, email, coming to a meeting, stopping us on the street. So I know people's comfort level differs, but there's more than one way to contact us depending on your comfort level. And I'll look into a survey.
But I'm saying what about like having it like on, I mean, it wouldn't be just like just my question. There'd be other questions or other information from other people, but just to include a citizen's question, so is that part clear? Why?
Yeah, sure. All right, that's clear to me. And there would be some use to that.
There would what?
There would be some use to that, yeah.
Okay, and should I get this one here?
Yeah, sure.
What can be done to create more of a culture of being treated well in the Vermont mental health system, Vermont organizations, and the environment?
Yeah, I think that there's so many obstacles that folks with mental illness face everywhere in the street. They face being stigmatized. There's a shortage of resources when it comes to getting people the treatment they need. So really, I think the first thing that Vermont needs to do is really be introspective about its commitment to folks with mental illness. I think that it's hard for everyone to get the help that they need, whether it's psychiatric or psychological, medical, just talk therapy. And I think we'd go a long way with again just connecting folks with treatment and making sure the treatment's properly funded. That's the first step to making people feel like they have dignity, like they're being cared for, like they have a future.
See, I stopped going to the Vermont mental health system because of how some clients and staff treated me. They didn't treat me well, and see part of having it known what happened. Like the truth shall set you free. And so, for example, it gets back to the survey thing of so that what the efforts for things to get better isn't in vain. It's like, it's not too impersonal, a question from a citizen. And I just, it was very traumatic what I went through. And,
Sorry to hear that.
And so when misunderstandings get neglected for a long time, how can they be repaired or redressed?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not extraordinarily familiar with the Vermont mental health system, having been here for less than 2 months, but I think any good institution, meaning the mental health services of Vermont or the state police or the Burlington police, any responsible institution has to have a means by which citizens can make complaints and a means by which they're taken seriously. And I hope that the Vermont mental health system, whether it's at the hospital level, at the healthcare provider level, even at the regulatory level in the government, that they have ways to make complaints. And then not just ways to make the complaints, but there has to be, you have to pay a bunch of folks and employ them to take those complaints seriously and look into them. I mean, just by way of, I had a problem with my health insurance. They didn't want to pay for some treatment that my family needed. They shut us down, and I went to New York State and filed a formal complaint. I just filled out an email form. It was very thorough. Didn't hear from anybody for 3 months, and all of a sudden a check came in the mail from my insurance provider. So though they weren't great at communicating with me, I know New York State had a way to take my healthcare concerns seriously. I mean, I hope Vermont has something like that for mental health as well.
Well, I'm just thinking about the community at large, basically wherever, like the chief of police for your community, whether it's a Vermont organization, Vermont mental health system, the community, wherever, I'm talking about the importance of being treated well, having a misunderstanding, not neglected, being treated seriously, even gets back to the survey thing, a personal question from a citizen, so that your efforts weren't done in vain, so that your life is taken seriously.
Sure.
And okay, is restitution for injustices when people are not being treated well be an option?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll ask a question. What do you mean by restitution? I know that could take a lot of different forms.
Well,
Financial, spiritual, I mean.
Well, okay, I guess I could say the survey'd be restitution, but having the question come from a person,
Sure.
or coming from a citizen, having people know, so I feel, okay, everything I went through wasn't in vain, people know, the truth shall set me free, people know. That could be one form of restitution.
Yeah, people need to know that they've been heard, that's right. I mean, I think, when I think of this, I think of restorative justice, which is sometimes, if someone's the victim of a crime, they don't even necessarily want the person who committed it to go to jail, or even have a criminal record. They just want to be able to confront that person in a safe environment, hear that person account for what they did, hear them apologize for it, maybe make them whole again if they stole something, give the monetary value back. I mean, and I think that we're talking about ways to keep people out of jail. That's one of them, right? There's a million paths to restitution, and I think we need to explore as many as we can.
Well, for healing, if, like, let's say that the survey, you set out a survey to citizens, and a question from a citizen, you'd feel like, okay, that's healing. It wasn't done in vain, what I went through. That's,
sure.
And, I mean, there's, like, doing this TV show can be a healing.
Yeah, you talk about, I think the theme I hear evolving from what you say and what you return to is giving people a voice. I think people really feeling like their concerns are heard goes a long way towards bringing them into the community, making them feel like they're a part of the community, and really healing, sure.
Like they're not just some old number.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
It has value, what their specific issue or thing that they're saying. It's not like it's a number, but it's a person.
Listen, cops feel that way too. I mean, literally, we wear numbers on our chests, and we feel sometimes like we're out doing a difficult job, and people see us as just a bunch of numbers. I'm number 802.
I know, but what I'm saying is,
No, I agree. I'm just agreeing. I'm saying there's
I think everyone wants
right.
to feel the value of an individual.
Sure. No, I'm just saying.
Well, I certainly do. I don't want to be just an old number that fits into the cracks.
Yeah, no, I'm saying as a person who works for an agency where we wear numbers on our chest, I know exactly how you feel.
And this one here, when you, like I said, keep in mind that people will have different opinions, but have you heard the myth of mental illness, the work of a radical psychiatrist, Dr. Thomas saying it doesn't exist? How could that affect police work? It's sort of like environmental, social, and economic. And so if you just go and say it is, the problem is within the person because they're wrong, you never deal with what about the social part of the other people that are part of the equation. How does that ever get dealt with if how does it, then how does, the healing from that or the justice from that? And so that's sort of the question I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, you were kind enough to explain a bit of this to me before the camera rolled because I didn't know too much about this particular author. But, I mean, there is something to the fact that mental illness has untold number of causes. It manifests itself in untold number of ways, from depression to much more serious disorders. There are environmental causes, financial causes, cultural causes. Sometimes someone is mentally ill simply because they're in a culture they just, over time, can't relate to. They feel displaced. I'm sure there's higher levels of mental illness in displaced and relocated persons than, middle-class persons born into a comfortable part of the world. So you're right. I think, police officers are aware of that. One of the challenges of policing is cops are called to fix problems right then and there. Policing is very good at smoothing out the everyday problems of life on the street and people's homes when they, flare up. Policing is not the best institution for fixing society's big problems.
But they're part of it.
I mean, we're part of the fabric of society, sure. I mean, we're citizens too. We live and work in society, so you're right, they are. But the solutions are not, we can contribute to the solutions. But if we're talking about the economy, if we're talking about culture, if we're talking about all these other things that cause mental illness, we're a small part of that. I mean, we really need the government, culture, society. We need everybody to fix those problems. And police know it. But every time someone calls 911, they go there and there's a little problem right in front of them that they have to solve. And it's a temporary solution.
Like a Band-Aid.
Yeah, listen, I mean, a lot of police work is great and has lasting effects, but a lot of police work is Band-Aid work too. That's right.
Right, I mean, some of it can have lasting effects, but then some of it can just be a Band-Aid,
Exactly, yeah. It's very frustrating sometimes.
And so I say, so how could police work be less complicated in a relationship to serious issues that the police deal with so that the communication could be better? Because I find that when there's things are so complicated, how could, the communication so that that part, that can be very difficult. And so okay, that's the question.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that it's not, I'm going to read the question. I'm going to take a little liberty with this question. I don't think we can make policing less complicated. Policing is one of the most complicated services the government delivers. Officers have to go from something like arresting a shoplifter all the way to like delivering the notification that somebody died to their family, all the way to dealing with a car accident, to policing a protest, to dealing with a drug dealer, to dealing with a shoplifter, to dealing with the homeless, people with mental illness. So it's not about, policing is as complicated as society is.
Well, you want it to be, to have it as good as it can be, you have to put effort into it.
Well, I think we need more complicated cops, is what I was going to say. We need cops that don't just see themselves as warriors. They see themselves as number one guardians. And sometimes you have to fight to be a guardian. Police work sometimes is about the use of force. And I tell folks, I don't want police to resort to force, but sometimes they do, and they have to be prepared to. And that's what makes it so hard, because in the next minute, they might have to be a bit of a social worker. In the next minute, they might have to be a little bit of a counselor, a problem solver. So we need really smart folks to be cops.
I know, but I mean, like the first approach, you come and someone has a problem. If you go and do it, what is the problem from your perspective, instead of just assuming that, that they're the problem, what I meant by how you go and approach the person can either escalate it or not escalate it.
No, good cops always seek to de-escalate. I tell every cop who I have the honor of leading, Sun Tzu, he's a Chinese philosopher of war from 500 BC. One of his most famous quotes is, defeating your opponent without fighting is the highest skill. And now not every citizen that a cop meets is an opponent, but there's a lot of wisdom in that statement anyway. De-escalating a situation, defusing a situation without coming to blows or being forceful or intimidating or coercing someone is the highest skill. I mean, the most famous philosopher of war said this, and I think it's wisdom for cops. You're right, they should always de-escalate, so they need to be counselors, they need to be communicators. And if you watch our best cops here in Burlington, they're talkers. They will listen and talk and de-escalate and solve a problem without making someone feel like less of a citizen.
Well, I'm also talking about not to be so the person doesn't feel intimidated either, because, they're coming, okay, well, here's a problem. So they automatically, before they just assume, okay, that person, somebody called, they said they were the problem, find out from that person's perspective what they think the problem is, because, I know that they go and talk to all the people about each person's perspective of the problem, but I'm just saying, how you go and do it really matters a lot.
Yeah, listen, there's a saying in police work, and the saying is, there's not two sides to every story, there's three sides to every story. So you might see some cops that jump to conclusions or act rushed and take one path and don't get both sides of the story. They're not doing the best police work. The best police work is very similar to what you described. It's about listening, being fair, and acting. You're right.
And then also, but then to come to the best solution after they have all the information.
Yeah.
And, not just jumping to what a solution should be. They might need to take time to figure out what the best solution is.
No, that's right. Rushed police work when you're in a hurry, is usually doesn't yield the best outcome. And impatient police work, even when you have the time, but you're just impatient, doesn't yield the best outcome. So the good cops have time. I say time isn't with the government. Time's on our side. We're getting paid by the hour. So, cops should do exactly what you're describing. But what you're talking about is very hard, Marj. I mean, they're not just doing it. They're doing it with customer-owner disputes, with car accidents, with cases of child neglect, with people's relationships, with drug dealing. They have to be experts at listening to all these types of problems and solving them fairly. I mean, that's why police work is so challenging. And then in a split second, they might have to use force, unfortunately. So they have to be all of that plus a good person of action.
Well, I'm just saying that, to have, back to this thing, a culture of being treated well You know, I mean, it gets.
You give what you get. Cops that treat people well get treated well. I believe that cops that are good listeners and good talkers ultimately are safer because they deal with the community in a way where they're respected, where people understand that they're trying to de-escalate rather than escalate. And honestly, like, I think that good cops, citizens look out to protect good cops. If they see that cop is in trouble on a street corner and they know he or she is a respectful officer, they'll get on the phone and call for help, or they'll rush out there and help the cop. So you're right. I agree with you, Marj.
Is there any specific thing you'd like to add to these things?
Yeah, that's I mean, thank you for giving me that chance. I will say that one of the things I really like about the Burlington Police Department is they have a great program. They work with the Howard Center Street Outreach Team. So, you know, we in Burlington recognize that policing issues that involve mental illness is very challenging. It requires a lot of specialized training. And so there are specialists at the Howard Center who know the population of mentally ill folks, folks struggling with issues in Burlington, and they work alongside the cops to make sure that it's not always just a cop trying to solve a problem, but a civilian, a coworker with special training, with a lot of experience, who knows how to listen and how to de-escalate. And it's really a huge asset, actually. For all we ask of cops, this kind of eases the burdens on them a little bit, and you know, and the folks who do it are great. They're great committed people. They're really highly respected, and I think they teach the police officers how to be more patient, and how to be better listeners, and how to help people with mental illness. Because ultimately, we're all human beings. We all need to be treated with dignity. There's a lot of challenges and obstacles sometimes, but that never changes. And every day, the struggle to do that goes on. Thank you. I mean, thanks for having me.
And thank you for coming. And I hope that somebody watched. I'm sure somebody did. And
me too.
thank you.
Hey, everybody. Thank you.